Hey guys, Beeler here. Today we can continue talking about four-wheel drive systems and some of our Google Classroom stuff. We talked a little bit about four-wheel drive, what the transfer case consists of, what it does. In this video we're going to talk about a little more about parts and pieces of the transfer case, how they operate, and we're going to talk about gear ratios. So this setup here is a T18 transmission, it's a Borg Warner setup. I ran this in the CJ5 for a while when we went trail riding and rock crawling. The transfer case is a Dana 20. It's been modified. It's got gears from a Ford Bronco transfer case. It brings the low ratio to a 2.46 to 1. When we talk about gear ratios, we use these to multiply torque. So you hear people talking on axles, 410, a 4.10, a 410 to 1 ratio that multiplies our torque by 4.1. So in this case, this transfer case in low range is a 2.46 to 1 in low range. In high range, it's a 1 to 1 ratio. So it acts like, when we're in high range, it acts like it normally would in a normal drive setup. This transmission is usually found in like 3/4 ton and 1 ton trucks. They have what they call a granny gear first gear. They have very low first gears for pulling stuff. In the off-roading world, they're great for hill climbing, going slow, crawling over stuff. So on this setup, you'll notice that the yokes, my front output yoke for the front wheel, for the front drive setup, and the rear yoke, I have marked with yellow paint. I've also marked the input shaft with yellow paint. I have a 12-point socket and a spinner handle set up on here, so I can turn this, so I can kind of demonstrate these ratios. So if we go to first gear in this transmission, and if you watch the input to the output, this is a 6.32 to 1 ratio. So in high, I should have to spin the front 6.32 times to get one rotation out of the rear. There's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, and a little bit, and we're right back one rotation on the rear. So this multiplied torque 6.3 times what the engine was producing. This is in first gear in high on the transfer case. If I go to shift to neutral, reset that, and we're going to go to fourth gear. Fourth gear on this setup is a 1 to 1 ratio. So one full turn on the input shaft gives us one full turn on the output. Now in the off-roading world, we talk about crawl ratio. Crawl ratio is your first gear multiplied by your low range multiplied by your final drive, your axle ratio. This is the overall mechanical advantage you have in low range first gear. This transfer case is set up as a twin stick, so I can control the front output and rear output separate. So if I want rear wheel drive high or rear wheel drive low, I can do that. I can run front high and front low separate. I can run them at the same time. So I'm going to shift this one into low range in both drives. Now watch how many times the input shaft has to spin to the output. So I'm in first gear, I'm in low range. This is going to give me a pretty low ratio. So you can watch as this thing's going around, how many rotations. I'm making a lot of rotations on the input shaft. Still rotating, still going, and we finally get one rotation out of the rear. Now in this setup on my Jeep, we ran a 456 to 1 axle ratio. When you multiply all this out, we have a 70.9 to 1 crawl ratio. So this thing's real low gear ratio. This thing at 3,500 RPMs, you'd have about 49 RPMs at the axle shaft. It multiplies torque, so let's say that AMC 360 in that vehicle, I'm guessing 300 foot-pounds of torque, multiplied by 70.9 to 1, the thing was making 21,270 foot-pounds of torque at the axle shaft due through the gear reduction. This thing was slow enough in low range, at idle, in first gear low, you could get out of the vehicle, walk around the vehicle, and get back in the vehicle and move that slow. Now, on transfer cases, we also have high range. So here's neutral. Get the other to pop. There. Now this is our high range. Now, as we rotate input shaft, the output shaft spins a little faster. The transfer case is now a 1-to-1 ratio. So if we were doing, let's say we were driving on snow on the road, we want to use high range, or maybe you're mud bogging and you got enough power to spin the tires, you can use high gear. If you need more torque, maybe you're in a vehicle that has less power, you can use low range. A lot of the new vehicles aren't using a low range option. I've seen Chevy Suburbans that just 4-wheel drive high. They don't have the low range because there's not much need for it in a passenger vehicle. This setup here in this Dana transfer case is a gear-to-gear setup. Some of the others use a chain. This is one I cut out of I think it was a little small SUV setup. Use a piece of chain for some other project. But some of them now use chain. They run chain, they have 2 gears in the transfer case, they run a chain to connect the front part of the drive. We'll be having an assignment in Google Classroom. We're going to be talking about crawl ratios. There will be details in the Google Classroom, instructions on that assignment. I will talk to you next time.